This is a clip from the Red Cow Arcade podcast.
Actually, not Book of Boba Fett, more like The Mandalorian. Am I right, folks?
Very much so. Yeah, the last time we talked about it, we hadn't been hit with the very good decision to abandon its own show. I mean, everybody likes it. Nobody's complaining, but I think everybody would agree it's fucking weird.
Yeah, it does feel like they knew it wasn't working, and they're like, let's just work on the show we like.
Yeah, it begs the question of, like, why not just have, like, a Star Wars show, and you just do whatever you want.
Yeah, this Star Wars buddy hour. And
or maybe you could do, like, you could be like, all right, there's like Star Wars Jedis, there's Star Wars Crime World, I don't know, like maybe categorize them slightly.
Yeah, or like each season has a theme, and kind of like what's that one called? American Horror Story, where every like season has a theme. And like,
so, like
if a couple in a row are the Mandalorian theme, that's okay. And
yeah,
just chase whatever Star Wars stories you want to chase.
It's just like, how did we get here? How did we get here? Like, where, if ever there was a character that people would have voted for a spin-off show or movie, it would have been Boba Fett. And yet somehow they invented a clone Boba Fett that was better.
Well, here's my theory about that is, well, maybe not much a theory, just the facts of the matter is they were going to make a Boba Fett movie.
Yep.
I think Jon Favreau wanted to make a Boba Fett show, couldn't do Boba Fett, so he's like, I'm going to make a guy who's really like Boba Fett. And
maybe he was like, I want to play, because really that first season, before they started getting into the Filoni-ness of it all, the Filoni baloney, they
your mileage may vary on Filoni baloney.
Yeah. I think it generally is very good in live action, and it's generally pretty wet farty in a cartoon.
Well, that's because there's a lot of like bloat in the cartoons, so it's like you have to deal with all the like Filoni baloney and bloat. It's good for YouTube clips, but it's not very good for.
Yeah, I was like, I wonder if I represent a pretty large section of the audience, which is like longtime Star Wars fans. So like, of course, like I show up for this and I'm excited about it. But really, when it comes down to it, I only like the original trilogy. I mean, if interrogated, like the other movies all kind of fell flat in their own unique way. And because they're varying degrees of bad, you start to kind of Phantom Menace starts looking a lot better and stuff. But the point is, there's three good ones. And but then like you read the books when you were a kid and stuff, and you played the video games, so you're invested in the franchise. And yet you haven't really enjoyed much of the franchise. You didn't go in for the cartoons because they were kind of derpy cartoons, derpy looking. Yeah. Maybe you were like me and you watched that like Clone Wars movie where they had a theatrical release of a cartoon that was like 3 episodes combined, and it was really not great.
Yeah, and then you're just like, oh, this isn't for me, so you just never check it out.
But then like later in life, you find it like lots of people say it's good, so you're like, all right, maybe so. And so, like, you find YouTube clips, and you're like, that was pretty good. You hear Sam Witwer monologue about, some moment in one of the cartoons, and you're like, this is compelling. And then you actually try to watch The Bad Batch. And you're like, no, it does suck, doesn't it? And yet, the elements that Ahsoka is very compelling to me in live action. And actually, in those last episodes of Clone Wars, she was compelling to me, too.
Yeah.
And now this Cad Bane character is very compelling to me. The stuff I just rattled off, I just know it's going to invite like a lot of like, oh, you didn't see this though. You should see this though. If you feel that way, then you should, I mean, sometimes those kinds of things work out for me, but generally, guys, your recommendations suck.
Well, I mean, I get it. Like, you can recommend those scenes and things, and I get it. Like, I can even when Cad Bane shows up, I haven't seen every Clone Wars episode with Cad Bane, but I get him. Like I get why people are excited to see him, and he was really well done in live action. That I actually watched that scene several times because I was like, that was just a good scene.
Yeah, I showed it to Nina like without context. I was just like, just check this out. And yeah, she was like, ooh, that was kind of cool. I don't even know who any of these people are. But yeah, there's something visceral about it. I think one thing, I saw a little bit of dissent where people are like, that's weird. He doesn't look like he does in the cartoon so much. But I was like, I like that they adapted him to be even more kind of reptilian. Yeah. And, it's like every single thing about that dude's face screams like, don't trust it, it's frightening. There's no pupils, there's no lips, there's spiky teeth. The voice, of course, is incredible. It's good stuff.
I mean, you're adapting a cartoon. It's a guy in a suit. You can't be the cartoon.
I really loved his because of course the character would be pretty aged at this point. I really loved the kind of like old man body language in it. Is this like old man killer? Yeah,
but still very intimidating and still, yeah.
It's very cool. I hope they do tons with him. I'm like, so it's again, it's impressive. It's like, here's Boba Fett. Here's this runaway character, this guy that captured everybody's imagination when they were children, and the franchise just never really ultimately did anything with him. They ended up making a clone army based on him, and they haven't really figured out him.
And every character is based on him, but it's not him.
Yeah. So ultimately they were like, well, here's the Mandalorian. How does that sound? And if what you need is like a killer, villainous bounty hunter, here's this other guy. So just kind of colored but Cad Bane, I think, based on the design, based on the kind of conceit of him, I think he has tremendous potential to kind of like carry the franchise forward. That sort of Boba Fett, Darth Maul type character, the intriguing character that never quite got their moment to shine. Although, yes, I acknowledge it would seem that Darth Maul got lots of moments to shine in the cartoons. Yeah. And I would love for them to do more with Darth Maul. I really would. They clearly were going to with the Solo stuff and didn't make good on it. Maybe they will.
Yeah, and it is interesting because this episode of the past episode really because they were trying to force this syndicate plot on us and it wasn't really working. But then all of a sudden we put Cad Bane in it, and you get Oliphant in here, and there's a threat there. I'm like, okay, now you're selling it to me. I wish this was a little bit earlier.
Yeah, they really should have done it earlier. Because the reason the Pike Syndicate doesn't work is because, or it hasn't up to this point, is because they're literally faceless. I don't know what they represent. I really don't know anything about them other than they're real bad. They're kind of like an evil corporate interest of some kind that obviously killed some Tuskens, and that pisses off Boba Fett. But it's more thematic of the bounty hunter thing, which is like the fulcrum of what is Boba Fett. To be like, all right, there's all these kind of interests. There's the Empire, there's syndicates, there's Jedi, and bounty hunters kind of just orbit all of these things. And so, when bounty hunters fight bounty hunters, that's kind of what we're here for. So, yeah, Cad Bane's just the thing. Yeah. And then, Luke looks pretty good with that now that they hired the YouTube guy.
Oh, yeah. Spoiler alerts, there's more Luke Skywalker. And I thought that all worked. I was kind of thinking while watching this, if you're just in for the Mandalorian, it's going to be a weird experience trying to watch all of that story, because then it's and then all of a sudden, a big chunk of it, a lot of lore of Mandalorians, and then this is in Book of Boba Fett. And so if you wanted to watch it all, if you were watching just the Mandalorian, it might be a little confusing. But I guess they just want you. They're assuming that everyone's watching everything, I guess.
Yeah, they're doing the Marvel thing of just don't try. If you try to serve every single person in the audience every single time, then you're never going to be able to grow the thing that you're trying to grow. Maybe it's something like that.
Yeah, because
but it does seem like they do have some kind of a strange branding problem on their hands.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. Is maybe I'm old and I'm picturing box sets of DVDs And if there's a box set of Mandalorian, do you also have to put those 2 episodes of the Book of Boba Fett?
You would have to. The right thing to do would be to have Star Wars 1, The Mandalorian Season 1, Star Wars 2, The Mandalorian Season 2, Star Wars 3, Book of Boba Fett, Star Wars 4, like that's how they should Marvel kind of does it that way too. They release all right, here's the Tesseract DVD set,
Yeah.
So you can kind of both group things and divide them, I suppose. But yeah, it's the whole thing, it's so weird. It didn't make it really, unless episode 7. And of course, there's a lot of potential for this. But if episode 7 sticks the landing, and we get a nice big Boba Fett, and we're like, yeah, they really did right by Boba Fett, then great. But it's hard to imagine at this point. So instead of making good on Boba Fett, the thing that you would have when you bought Lucasfilm for $4 billion, one of the first things you would do is make sure you did Boba Fett right. But it's we're going to squander Boba Fett and in its place do a bunch of better things. It's really weird.
Yeah, well,
I'm here for it.
He wasn't bad in The Mandalorian. That episode of Mandalorian, the episodes with Boba Fett were amazing. And he's brutal. He's everything you'd think Boba Fett was. And then in this one, you get 2 episodes of Dances with Wolves with Boba Fett. And then you get him, walking around into bars and walking around. I really enjoy the Dances with Wolves shit. I have watched the Dances with Wolves thing from when he starts tripping with the thing up his nose to getting the thing made. That is a great
dance.
scene.
I've watched that 10 times now. I don't know why it captures my imagination. I just love this rebirth thing, I think. Maybe it's got something to do with losing 140 pounds, or you're kind of but yeah, I love somebody turning a corner, a major corner.
A lizard.
Because it's such a rare thing.
I'm sorry, I believe I swallowed it.
Oh, I'm tripping on lizards.
Sorry, mate.
But then Luke's disembodied voice, though, was still quite weak.
Yeah, it's interesting. So my guess is that was Mark Hamill, and they processed it to make it sound more like his younger self.
I think that's probably true at this point, because there was just too much dialogue to not do that. But I know that, having watched the 45-minute making of the last Luke, that was all AI voice.
Really?
When they make Trump say funny shit.
Oh, yeah.
It's that thing.
Yeah, because it sounds a little. Maybe you're right. Maybe it does sound a little dead, but
it sounds unperformed.
Yeah.
It's like you're going to have to make a decision about the lightsaber,
it sounds quiet and distant all the time. It's the reverse of Bane and Batman, The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, where it was ever present.
It's almost that's what makes me think it was processed to hell, because sometimes when I'm processing audio that's damaged, it can sound really weak and in the background when you take out too much information. So that's what it made me think it was actually a voice that was processed.
But they should feel lucky, because they have Return of the Jedi Luke is a little flat, by design. And so, your thoughts betray you, Father. I feel the good in you, the conflict. He can basically just do that in AI form forever, I guess.
But yeah, I mean, I did think this was a way, I wasn't thinking about it as much. Of course, I'm thinking about it because I'm a filmmaker and a video producer. So I'm like, oh, how did they do that? How did they do that? But it was much less. It was much less where the one that even briefly appeared in Mandalorian season 2, I was just like, ugh.
Yeah, I think so. For those who don't know, there, obviously they've done Moff Tarkin, they did Leia in Rogue One, and they did a lot of complicated things with Leia that were pretty successful in Rise of Skywalker, because they actually had source footage that they could, all they had to do was kind of recomposite it and stuff. And then end of Mandalorian season 2 with Luke, it was an actor with a face replacement, a keyframe face replacement with some deep fake elements. So it was a hybrid approach to the solution. And then somebody on YouTube just like that. A guy who has like redone the Leia one, and he just for fun, like he took Alden Ehrenreich from Solo and just replaced him with like Harrison Ford's face and stuff. And it always looks incredible, the work that this guy does. He might even be the guy who like replaced like Bill Hader's face with Arnold Schwarzenegger's
Oh, maybe,
face.
yeah.
Like,
I think you might be.
yeah. But he does amazing work, and he redid Luke, and it's like what they presented to us on Disney Plus was kind of, it was like essence of Luke, but there was definitely Uncanny Valley there. It like reminded me of Luke from Return of the Jedi, but it wasn't Luke from Return of the Jedi, and when this guy did it, it was Luke from Return of the Jedi. It almost looked like it was like photoshopped from that. So they hired this guy. I think Jon Favreau is the smart enough fella to be like, if he's doing it better every time, like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, do we not have money?
Yeah, and there's a lot of shots of him in this episode, and they all look very passable. Like, so passable that it doesn't bother me at all.
There's a few things that they really nailed more this time around. I think one was and by the way, there's this YouTube series. It's called like VFX artists react to bad VFX, where they'll try, like they redid some Birdemic VFX, and they tried to do their own version of Luke. They got an actor, they got a wig, they try in like 48 hours, we're going to try to do better. And they did not do better. They did worse. It looked a lot, they were very proud of themselves, but I was like, this looks like shit compared to what Disney Plus put out. But this other dude did it right. And I think that they actually got the hair more right.
Yeah.
The hair matters.
That matters a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, they got that more right this time. And there's something about the body language and the physique of the actor that I think it is the same actor as last time, but maybe the cape was fucking with me. I don't know. But he looked right in his body this time.
Yeah, he had the better
and I
physique.
think even his face unaltered. The performance cadence kind of was more like Luke. So I think all they really had to do was map on, a minor amount of Luke from Return of the Jedi with deep fake, and they basically had it. I think visually it was pretty much immaculate.
Yeah.
Like it was close, like, perfectly passable. It's just that now they got to figure out the voice. There's this one line. He says something like what will happen to him? He says something
yeah.
And it doesn't lip sync at all. Like they just gave up and released it, I guess.
Yeah, and the inflection is on, like, there's no, I don't even know what he's trying to say. Like, is he disappointed?
Yeah.
Is he, I don't even know.
His mouth is still flapping when he's done with the line. I'm like, what the fuck?
I know exactly the line
that?
you're talking. Yeah.
It's when it's when Grogu falls asleep with the frogs.
Yeah.
And he's like looking out at him with Ahsoka, and it's just like, I'll tell you this much. It's hard to imagine that Luke growing into the sack of shit that we see in Last Jedi.
Yeah, I don't even know. It all is kind of disappointing, is it?
Well,
they got to retcon all this stuff.
Maybe it'll eventually be like Marvel, where there's just so much of it that all you remember is the good, and you can discard the bad, and even the bad. If there's some memorable good things in the bad, you can only introduce those elements, and it'll be like just the way your memory maps it. Yeah. Like you dilute the effects. We can diminish the effects of it.
Oh, I guess George Lucas was ultimately right. He's talking about Marvel.
There was a clip of him going around. It was recommended to me recently. It was called "George Lucas is Brilliant" or "George Lucas is a Genius" or something. And I was like, all right, let me see, because I've made fun of this guy before, and
just once or twice.
And, yeah, I mean, it wasn't the most profound thing I've ever heard in my life, but it was like, you know what? In like a minute and 16 seconds, George Lucas might have summarized life itself just then, where he was like, there's basically two ideas. There's two happinesses. There's joy and there's pleasure. And pleasure goes much higher, but every time you want it, you can eat it twice as much to get the same high. And joy doesn't go as high, but it's longer. And pleasure is selfish, and joy is the happiness that you share with others. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty much it, man. Like if you could somehow like always diminish your pursuit of pleasure and always maximize your pursuit of joy, if you could somehow do that every day, you'd win.
Yeah.
And he was like, he didn't say this, but he basically was like, take it from a multi-billionaire. Like the pleasure thing it only takes you so far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Subscribe to Red Cow Entertainment on Patreon for full episodes every other week.